Here we go.
Taking a picture.
Tone's getting his panorama screenshot of the whole audience here.
So Tone is adding to his Instagram story or something. Yeah.
All right, shitcoin slayers. These guys need really no introduction. They've already been introduced by Brady, but everybody knows who these guys are. So let's just dig right into it. After a slight investigation backstage a little while ago, we have determined that Tone Vays has been shitcoining. Tone, tell us about your recent shitcoining.
Yeah, I kind of just got rug pulled by United Airlines. So I collect miles from all my travels, like United, American Airline, Marriott, and it just got devalued like 50%. And I was being like schooled backstage that I'm shitcoining in the airline. So I avoided the shitcoins in crypto, and I just got rug pulled by shitcoins in fiat.
And tell them how many miles you have on United Miles Plus.
I have like 600,000 over there or something.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Rugged by an airline.
And why do you have this many miles, Tone? Why?
Because I wanted to optimize. I don't use them on myself. When you use miles on yourself, you can't earn miles and you can't expense it when you file taxes. And so I only use miles on like other people, and I haven't been using those lately on other people.
Okay, so we need to get Tone a girlfriend with a good passport. So if you want to apply, see him after. Yeah.
I do think, though, that Tone's reasoning or false reasoning here really highlights something that other cryptocurrencies, let's call them poop coins because my daughter's in the audience, they do create artificial complexity in order to game people's psychology.
Yeah, and that psychology is exactly what was exploited in Tone because he got addicted to the earning of miles. Much like a lot of Binance traders, for example, get addicted to earning BNB tokens for doing certain amounts of trading and so on. So Tone, it's a little embarrassing, I imagine, to fall down the same dynamic. How are you going to fix this anytime soon? What's going on?
Yeah, I know. I'm learning my lessons, but no. Now I gotta hold out and wait for them to revalue them higher. I'm in it for the long haul, man.
NGMI.
Yeah, it's not going to the moon, buddy. Sorry.
No, but there's hope. None of you saw the Trayvon video. There's hope.
This is what some Bitcoiners call climbing Mount Stupid. So as Bitcoiners, many of us have experienced this where from time to time, we'll do dumb things with shitcoins as we're learning. It's the cost of our education. Do any of you guys have any interesting or funny climbing Mount Stupid stories aside from what Tone's doing right now?
So, something that people often say is Bitcoiners are closed-minded, and so they don't really, understand what these other cryptocurrency systems are doing. And I made the mistake of exploring the Ethereum ecosystem by getting some ETH. And there was a service that allowed you to swap your ETH into a Sats and a Lightning channel. And I wanted to see if this service actually worked. It didn't. So total loss that I wrote off. And I should have known better given my history of critiquing Ethereum. But there we go. And that's why when people say, oh, Bitcoiners are not experimenting with these other cryptocurrencies, maybe make something that is not, a total loss every time we try to experiment with it. That would make it more interesting.
Yeah, I think I tried to trade ETH one time, and I think I bought like the top against Bitcoin, like literally bought at like 0.15 to try to trade it. And that taught me a lesson that I'm a terrible trader, despite being friends with Tone. And I shouldn't do that, like, ever. And yeah, that wasn't like anything related to their functionality. It was just, hey, there's some momentum. Let's see if I can ride it. Terrible idea. Terrible idea.
Are any of you guys friends with Vitalik?
Wait, what was that?
Are any of you friends with Vitalik?
Oh, no, I met him once, and he always has like a crowd around him, like some sort of god. But yeah, no.
Well, I did debate him last year at La BitConf, so that's like on stage and stuff, or on YouTube. I do have some history with him. I won't get into it here. You can go search a podcast, but suffice it to say that I think he's just like a developer coming out of college, thinks he knows a lot of stuff and refuses to use any existing technology. And because he's running a Ponzi scheme, he gets away with never having to admit that he's wrong, ever. So he's just not a very good coder. What can I say?
Okay, then. So let's dig into a couple of other areas here. This is a Bitcoiner conference, full of Bitcoiners. If there are any non-Bitcoiners here, they probably aren't saying that. I think some people wonder sometimes why Bitcoiners are so, what's the word? Sometimes, occasionally hostile towards people who are trying to sell you their other things. So the question is this, any of you guys can answer this, you can all answer it. Are shitcoins good in any way? Is there any good thing about them, like maybe testnet?
I'll take the devil's advocate position on that. I do think that their marketing can appeal to folks who Bitcoin's marketing, using that term loosely, does not appeal to, and it hooks them into this idea of using cryptography in order to have some kind of monetary system, and then they learn the hard way as their investment doesn't pan out, and they start looking at, okay, well, maybe I missed something with Bitcoin. Despite its marketing not appealing to me at first sight, maybe there's something there. And so I do think that it is potentially part of the top of the funnel in terms of converting from normie to Bitcoiner. And I know that there's lots of people who started out shitcoining in that world and then eventually found their way to just being Bitcoin only.
Yeah, I would add to that. It would be more like it's so full of bear traps, and you get caught in it and you suffer. So in a sense, shitcoins are a world of pain. And that pain is useful because it eventually leads people to question the monetary system and see the virtues of Bitcoin for some people. Other people like the pain. I don't know if they're masochists or something, but they just continue in the degenerate gambling or something like that. But the lesson can be learned in that space easier than it can in the fiat world, where being rug pulled by a currency is a multi-decade process.
Yeah, and I think that even people, those who do convert into Bitcoin only, offset that with the people who get burned on crypto and then kind of write it off as a whole. And they assume that Bitcoin is just like the token that they got rugged on, and they move on to AI or some other fad.
Yeah, so I would say they're definitely a net negative, but if you want to point out a couple of positive things, it's people get burned there, and people maybe learn a lesson, but vast majority of the people don't learn their lesson and get into degenerate gambling.
I'll jump in real quick. It is definitely a net negative, but are there instances for a short period of time where a shitcoin is potentially useful? Yeah, probably. But it's for a very short period of time, like in 2017, when Bitcoin fees were just crazy. And if someone wants to, before Lightning existed, and if someone is going to send you a $1 donation, it would actually cost you more than that to move it out when you move the rest of the Bitcoin out of that wallet. Was Litecoin useful during that 1 month stretch? Yeah, maybe, probably, but it's 1 month. Other than that, the price will keep going down, down, down. And overall, it's just not worth it. And as long as Bitcoin adopts second layer solutions, they're all going to be not very necessary. And as far as them being a test net, my best analogy is, well, are you going to invest in Tesla, or are you going to invest in a crash test dummy company that is a necessary component, for Tesla? But how many people are out there investing in crash test dummies, even though they kind of exist and they're there and they're not going to go away because they're kind of useful, but they're not an investable thing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So one thing that I've wondered about is, do you guys have any thoughts on how much capital has been burned in shitcoins? Like, it's probably a lot.
I'd say it's about Bitcoin's market cap of $400 billion. I'd say that in terms of capital that has been burned, but then going forward, I think that because they're all trending towards zero, there's still a lot more capital that is going to be burned from these experiments that they're running on the public.
Yeah, you could kind of tell by the excesses of the altcoin industrial complex. When they're hiring Snoop Dogg for like a conference to do a party, that's all money that's getting burned. When they hire Tom Brady to do a 60-second commercial, that's money that's getting burned. So I actually think it's probably greater than 400 billion. Just SBF by himself might be 400 billion. There's a bunch of other VC funds and stuff like that invested in a lot of this stuff. And if it's getting wasted, if they're throwing lavish parties, giving away Lambos and stuff like that, that's waste. So just given what I've seen of altcoin conferences and the giveaways they have and stuff like that, I suspect I don't know, 800 billion, I think, would be a conservative estimate.
What do you think, Tone?
Yeah, Jimmy's right. Look, it's money that kind of enters the economy. As long as it's, if they're going to use it to, buy a Lambo and give it away, I don't have as much of a problem with that than what SBF did and using that money, to bribe politicians. That's when it's really bad. But if they're going to, blow it on a big conference, that's money that's entering the economy of, kind of evens out. But yeah, it's a lot of money being, could have been used more wisely.
I'm going to disagree on the broken window fallacy that you just had. But yeah, all that money being wasted in an economy just is kind of wasted. It doesn't enter the economy. It's just sort of high time preference people living it up. It doesn't make a benefit.
I was just going to say Lambos are a shitcoin too, so I don't buy the argument that converting your shitcoin into a Lambo is good.
All right. Would Bitcoin be more valuable in US dollar terms if we didn't have a whole bunch of shitcoins sucking up all this capital?
Okay, I feel very strongly about this, so I'll go ahead. No, I don't think so. I think that essentially because Bitcoin can only absorb so much capital, that the wider crypto ecosystem becomes a pressure release valve that capital spills into. And so we like to think that Bitcoin could go to the moon overnight. That's what I first thought when I was getting into Bitcoin. But the reality is that people are going to want to rebalance their portfolios. And so if Bitcoin goes up 10x, you're going to have lots of sell pressure. And the people who are looking at whether to buy Bitcoin or not, they're looking at it and saying, it already went up 10x. And so they assume that the gains for Bitcoin are in the past, and they're going to naturally be attracted to other cryptocurrencies. But if those other cryptocurrencies didn't exist, I don't know that they would buy Bitcoin. I think that they would sooner go buy some piece of real estate or something else. So I don't think that Bitcoin's market cap or price would be any higher today if magically we were to wave a wand and there'd be no S coins.
No, I'm actually going to disagree with that. I think it would be higher. One of the reasons why Ethereum is still around is because people are still creating a lot of these shitcoins on top of Ethereum. And not that I care about these things, but in a free market, if all of those shitcoins and ERC20s started out being created on a side chain of Bitcoin, thank God it's not on the main chain, but if it was on Liquid or on RGB, I think that would bring the price of Bitcoin higher because it would be like the ultimate underlying layer. I understand why people don't really buy BRC20s. I don't think they're going to take off. Shitcoins on Bitcoin don't take off because your underlying speculator in those shitcoins on top of Bitcoin is a Bitcoiner who can see through it. And anyone building shitcoins on top of Ethereum, their underlying investor is someone that's already proven that they don't believe in sound money or they wouldn't have Ethereum to begin with. But overall, I do think that the price of Bitcoin would be higher if Ethereum wasn't around.
I'm going to disagree with both of these guys. I think Bitcoin would be higher, but not for the reasons that Tone stated. So I think Bitcoin would be a lot higher without altcoins. First of all, because altcoins have tarnished the Bitcoin brand significantly. It's thrown a lot of confusion around it. People think that it's something that it's not.
Yeah,
they're all the same, blah, blah, blah. So the actual real value proposition of Bitcoin, that message has a hard time getting out because of the narrative around crypto. So I think that would not be there. And because of that, I think if Bitcoin does 10x, there are going to be enough true believers to grow that base of belief, right? The real people, the sellers of last resort, or the buyers of last resort, the people, the real believers that make up most of you guys, hopefully, that would have grown faster. And instead of this confusion, there'd be a lot of clarity. I don't think RGB or Liquid tokens would have taken off instead. I don't think they add that much value, honestly. And I speak as a former color coins developer from 2013. I've been watching this stuff for a long time. If it's a centralized issuance of something, then it doesn't need to be on a blockchain. And you're still trusting a third party. And this is true of a lot of things. Now, it can be useful, I suppose. I mean, we can talk about Tether if you want. But in a sense, that's not where the money's going. The money should have been going into store of value, something that you can save in. It's a great savings technology, and we're still having trouble getting that narrative out because of the existence of altcoins.
You know, something else I wonder about is venture capitalists, VC firms have been able to make a killing with shitcoins. Basically, they get in, they fund these things, they're issued a bunch of tokens that they get to sell to the public, and they reap a huge windfall. What I wonder about is how much VC money might have gone into Bitcoin instead. I don't think it's much because the incentives are pretty screwed up. Like if you look at how much VCs have to gain with the game that they've been playing in terms of churning shitcoins, but would some portion of that instead have gone into Bitcoin, and would that maybe have affected the equation as well?
Yeah, I suspect that some of it would have gone into Bitcoin, certainly because, I mean, a lot of it goes into Bitcoin already. Like what a lot of people don't know about a lot of these crypto VC funds is they do a capital call and they put like 30-40% into Bitcoin because they know that then they're playing with house money, that they're going to be okay and they're going to have some returns. They're not going to really lose after the 5 or 7 years or however long the period of the investment is. And then they use the rest to try to pump and dump and like beat Bitcoin in that way. That game's been going on mostly because of the fiat side. The money printing I don't think would have stopped because Bitcoin existed, but maybe it does, right? Like, in a sense, like, if you have sound money and it's clear to everybody that there's sound money and there's no altcoin to sort of muddy that narrative, then it's entirely possible that a lot more people choose to put money into Bitcoin instead of VC funds, and instead of having, I don't know, like 20 different crypto funds that are out there, all that money maybe goes into Bitcoin instead. So you know, in another way, that would have increased the price of Bitcoin, decreased the influence of VCs, and so on.
I think there's the VC part, and there's also the developer part. So perhaps there would be lots of developers who today are working on other, altcoins, but in a different set of incentives, they would actually be working on Bitcoin and Bitcoin companies, and the VCs would have more investable opportunities out there because arguably more VC money can't go into Bitcoin companies today because there just aren't enough investable Bitcoin companies to allocate capital to.
And also some of the better Bitcoin companies, they didn't rely on VC money and they were able to choose their own direction. So it doesn't mean that this would have been a great thing because sometimes VCs do want you to move fast and break things so they can cash out. And in Bitcoin, that doesn't really work.
And that's a great point, because if you do have more entrepreneurs that are creating Bitcoin companies out of their savings instead of just going the VC route, maybe we'd have a healthier ecosystem or more robust ecosystem, more jobs for people that wanted to come into Bitcoin and so on. Overall, I think altcoins have massively damaged the potential that Bitcoin had. In the sense of the opportunity cost. Thankfully, reality is striking back, and you're seeing more of a Bitcoin focus everywhere in the world as these altcoins continue rug pulling, continue disappointing. A lot of these disillusioned people maybe take a second look at Bitcoin, and that's the hope anyway.
Okay, so I've seen a lot of charts, shitcoin charts. In US dollar terms, they resemble what I call a pump and dump. So these are stock plays that basically they'll make all kinds of claims about how cool the technology is and how life-changing it's going to be. You see the stock shoot up, and then it kind of does this thing as it slowly dies a death after that. What causes these things to fail? Why are they not coming to fruition, doing the things they say they're going to do?
I'll jump in on it. A lot of them never actually fail. The token is still around at a very low price. But it's the same thing. It's why I always anticipated Celsius would go the way it did. When you launch your project with a token, the one thing that keeps the project alive is the price of that token. Once the price of the token comes down low enough, there is nobody else to pay for development. This is the same for all of these other blockchains as well and individual companies. Eventually, it will happen to Ethereum as well. So the situation, just like with Celsius, once the price of that token is low enough, they don't have the money. They're not going to be able to put their names on stadiums anymore. And it's expensive. I don't know if I don't mind naming names, but I don't know how much sponsoring all of UFC costs, but eventually Crypto.com, I don't know where they have the money to sponsor every single UFC fight. And I think a lot of it still comes from the value of that token. And if the value of that token drops low enough, how do you pay for that sponsorship? Where's the money going to come from?
Yeah, that whole dynamic is, of course, caused, ironically, by fiat money, right? The insane money printing, zero interest rates, and stuff like that means that there's all this money that needs to find a home, needs to find some sort of savings vehicle. And because a lot of VCs can't just put it into Bitcoin, although they do some of it, they need to beat Bitcoin. They get into these weird games where they'll have to fund these other things and do the pump and dump thing, and that's a better return for them. Unfortunately, most of these altcoins are essentially companies. This is why when they run out, when the price of the token gets low enough, that means their own treasury is very low because they keep a large pre-mine, right? So the treasury gets low, then they can't pay anybody, and at that point, it's kind of over. And that's a dynamic we've seen over and over and over again, and it's not going to stop. There's so many of these altcoins where they don't have money anymore, right? And they can't continue to function. Now, some of them are going to last a lot longer than others. I think EOS has like 100,000 Bitcoin or something ridiculous. So you can expect that one to last a while, but the people there seem to know the game, that they can live off of this and rent seek off of this money that they collected from suckers for a long time. And that seems to be sort of the strategy that they're taking instead of being true believers and trying to create something for the ecosystem.
Just to add to that, and Pierre will probably elaborate on it, this is why no other proof of work coin will ever succeed. Because eventually, no one is going to want to mine it. The cost of mining will be higher than the value of the token. With every halving Litecoin experiences, it loses more and more hash rate, and eventually, just like Doge, it ends up in a mining death spiral, and it has to merge mine with the coin above it until eventually there's only one proof of work coin left. It's the same thing for non-proof of work coins, same concept, but it's easier to picture it in a proof of work setting.
Yeah, for the non-proof of work coins, I mean, I saw a commentary about how with US dollar interest rates being higher than the yield on staking Ethereum, that this created a massive problem for the sustainability of their protocol. And I think that it goes back to the question of how does an altcoin differentiate itself from Bitcoin? Let's keep in mind that Bitcoin is engineered to minimize uncertainty of the system, to maximize freedom for the users, to empower people to control their own money. So to differentiate from that, you have to reduce how much freedom people have. You have to reduce how much people can control their own money in order to create some marketing gimmick about how you're generating yield for them, or you can put JPEGs onto the blockchain. So once you're taking those trade-offs are going to catch up to you, and they're value destructive in the long term. So after that pump and dump in the long term, you don't really have any value there that is going to help drive the economics for the token. And I think that's ultimately why Bitcoin edges out these other cryptocurrencies.
All right, very good. Let's switch gears a little bit. One thing that I think people wonder about is these things called stablecoins. All right, so what the hell are they? Are stablecoins shitcoins, or do they actually have some value to the economy or at all?
So yeah, it's a good question. I mean, my take on stablecoins is that they're a form of regulatory arbitrage, that they allowed you to use the US dollar without having to deal with as much KYC AML as a traditional financial system. And so in that regard, they do increase financial inclusion for folks, but at the end of the day, they're still fiat, and they're still tied to the value of the dollar, and the Federal Reserve is still going to print more dollars.
I'll jump in real quick. So it depends on the type of stablecoin. If it's an algorithmic stablecoin, it is a 100% shitcoin. I don't see how that's debatable. Now, if you have something like a tether that is redeemable for US dollars, where the US dollars or equivalent to cash, like short-term treasuries, are being held, that's a little bit debatable. There are additional risks that come with that, like the government can come and confiscate that money. But I don't really consider that side a shitcoin. And then there's in-between stuff where you have like smart contracts locking up crypto, and that's on the border somewhere.
Yeah, so this is a question that every altcoin advocate comes up with as soon as you say, all shitcoins suck or whatever. It's like, oh, but stablecoins are an altcoin. They're not so bad. And in a sense, I agree. Like they're basically bank accounts for people that don't want KYC, AML, for people in other countries that don't have access to US bank accounts and so on. But really, they're a shitcoin because they're fiat. Fiat money is a shitcoin. US dollar is a shitcoin. Euro is a shitcoin. Yen is a shitcoin. All of those are shitcoins. So in that sense, it is. And I don't think they're any better. They're centrally controlled. So ultimately, what we have is Bitcoin, which is a decentralized, digitally scarce money. And you have everything else, which has some trusted third party, some centralized controller, somebody that can affect your savings without your consent. That's the difference, and that's why we need to get rid of altcoins. Altcoin delenda est.
Awesome.
Go. Last comment, and we're done. Don't shitcoin. It's really bad for you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Bitcoin Slayers.
Thanks, Alex.
Shitcoin Slayers.
Oh, hi. Do you have your ticket to the next Pacific Bitcoin Festival? Join us as we shine a light on the best of Bitcoin and Bitcoiners. Visit pacificbitcoin.com for the best deal on tickets now.